Okay, so we're going to look at the task 1 for describing a process. So for this task 1, we've got 2 pictures of cement production and then concrete production. Okay, so very exciting. Got to write 150 words summarizing and talking about the process of making cement and concrete. So let's have a look at what this candidate wrote. So we start off with the 2 diagrams show that equipment is used to produce cement along several stages, and how cement is used to make concrete for the construction of buildings. Overall, it is clear that there are 5 specific stages to make the cement, and the cement is mixed with 3 different materials to make the concrete. So I thought here the 2 diagrams show that the equipment is used to produce along the several stages. Along here isn't really the right word to use, so you would use, in several stages or through several stages. Along is sort of more following while you're sort of talking that the processes are happening, so you wouldn't really use along here. I like is then mixed with 3 different materials to make the concrete. So what I like, so here the first section, they've got their sort of overview sentence, and then they've got their summary. So we've got 2 sentences. We've got the first one, which is sort of giving the background information, and then we've got the overall sentence. So it's very important in your task 1 to make sure you've got your overview as well as your paraphrase. You really need to make sure that you're sort of summarizing the sort of main features of what you're talking about. So that's what they do in the second sentence that starts with overall. Overall, it's clear that there are 5 specific stages. So I like the fact that they split up the first image. They're like 5 specific stages. That's good to make the cement, and the cement is then mixed with 3 different materials. So again, you're being specific about the information that you've seen in the picture. So that's good to make the cement. So overall, I thought this was a very good start. This is what you want to see in a task 1. The only thing I would say to improve this would be maybe to make you could add some more specific vocabulary or high-level vocabulary into your overview or into your paraphrase. So you could say, show the equipment, or show the type of technological equipment that is used to produce cement, or something like that. You could sort of talk a little bit more about the process. It's a man-made process. It's a technical process, or something like that would be to improve. But overall, I thought this was a very strong introduction. So we move on to the next part. We've got looking at the first diagram more closely. This is a very good start to your sentence. I like this start a lot. I thought this was very strong, correct. It sounds good. It's a nice link. It's a nice clause here by itself. And it makes a very nice transition into the first paragraph. So looking at the first diagram more closely, one can see that the process begins when the limestone and the clay are put into a crusher and changed into a powder. So we've got here the limestone and the clay. We can get rid of that there if we want to. We can just say the limestone and clay. We don't need to say there twice. That's a very small point. Are put into a crusher and changed into a powder. So the only issue here is changed into a powder. Changed is not really the kind of right word you want to use here. Change sort of makes it sound quite magical. It makes me think of Harry Potter, like you made a spell and abracadabra and it changed into a powder. So a better word to use here, goes into a crusher and it was ground into a powder, would be a better word to use there. Then the powder passes through the mixer, then the powder passes through the mixer, and at the next point the mixture is heated by a rotating heater. Okay, so that's fine. And at the next stage, the mixture can be the cement when it is put into a grinder. The mixture can be the cement. Can become, should be here, or becomes. The mixture becomes cement when it is put into a grinder. In the final step, the finished cement is packed into a bag. So the only issue I really got here in this one is I've got, we've got an inappropriate word choice here, and then this grammar is a little bit incorrect, it's a little bit confusing. So as you saw as I was reading it, I had to go back and read it twice to try and figure out what they were trying to say. So there's sort of 2 sort of issues with this paragraph, but it's mostly quite good. And the only other thing I would say about it is that it feels mechanical as we're reading it, because you've got they're using the cohesive devices, so they've got then the powder pass through the mixture, and at the next point, the mixture is heated by over 2. At the next stage, the mixture can be taken in the final step. So they're using their cohesive devices, but which is good, which is fine. But then to get into the higher level answers, this is what makes it feel quite mechanical to read. So especially we've got next repeated twice. So you've got the next point at the next stage, and then it's the same structure. The next point, the next stage, the final step. So that's what makes it sound mechanical. It's different words, but it's the same structure. So if you're trying to move into your high level, your band 6s and higher, this is what you need to be working on to try and make it sound more natural, or to try and create a sort of style as you're writing. So rather than that, you could this candidate could put following that. Following that would be a different sort of structure. You'd be using 2 words instead of the 4 words structure that you've been using, something like that. This is where it comes into making more complex sentences, because you can then move, this phrase around in the sentences by creating longer sentences. So what this candidate has done is they've kind of got, short sentence, short sentence, short sentence. Okay? So if they were able to combine these into longer, more complex sentences, you would overcome that sort of mechanical feeling to it, and it would improve their score. But I mean, overall, it's a good paragraph, but if you're looking to move into sort of band 6 plus, that's the kind of thing you need to start thinking about and you need to start practicing. So we look into the next paragraph. The first thing I'm looking at when I'm looking at this is, it's a lot shorter than the other one. So if we look at the first paragraph, I'm like, 4 sentences, maybe it's kind of around the same length, but I would have expected it to be a little bit longer, or for there to be like a summary sentence, maybe here, like a little sort of overview summary at the end. So then they say in the second diagram, it is clearly seen that there are 4 materials needed to produce concrete with specific percentages of each. So with the specific percentages of each given. Okay, so the diagram tells us the specific percentages of each that's written on the diagram. I don't really like it when candidates say it is clearly seen. I think sometimes candidates try and do that to sort of increase their grammar score. But actually, even though it's a correct thing to say, when I'm reading it, it sounds a little bit unnatural, and it sounds kind of odd and clunky when I read it in a sentence. So I would usually say something like, if the second diagram clearly illustrates, or clearly shows, or something like that. It is clearly seen that, it's fine, it's correct. I just personally think it sounds a little bit odd when I read it in a sentence, but a lot of candidates like to use that phrase. It's clearly seen that there are 4 materials needed to produce concrete with specific percentages of each given. To produce concrete with a concrete mixture, 50% of packed cement, 10% of water, 25% of sand, 50% of gravel, small stones are the factors in making the concrete. So the factors here, isn't really what we're talking about here. Here we're talking about ingredients. So these are the ingredients, or the raw materials. And then factors of making the concrete raw. So these are the ingredients or raw materials required for, making the concrete. Okay. So the factors of making the concrete. Factors are more sort of like reasons or ideas or events. So we wouldn't really use that to talk about the specific physical ingredients that we would use to make concrete. So factors isn't really the correct use of the word there. You could, if this candidate was going to expand on this, if we remember in the picture, in the second diagram, we have got this arrow going around, so you could make some kind of comment about, the mixer rotates in a certain way. So one thing they're doing is it's turning to the left. So when things turn to the left, we talk about clockwise. So we could say it was being rotated, or it's mixed in a clockwise direction. Could be something you could pick up from the diagram. So you talk about rotating, the direction of it. I like how here they've said what gravel is. Small stones using brackets, which is good punctuation. So I like this. This was good. Overall, I thought pretty good, pretty solid answer. Could be extended a little bit more. A couple of issues where they used the incorrect word, but I understood what they meant. So if we're coming to mark it, I think task achievement was pretty good. I would give a 6.5 for that. But I think if they were going to improve, I would want them to extend more. So especially in the second paragraph, I thought they could give a little bit more detail about what they saw. And that, to be honest, with task 1, especially with some of these processes ones, that's the real challenge, is being able to look at it and being able to come up with things to say about it. And that's something that you have to practice by just doing a lot of practices. Being able to think, okay, what kind of things can I say about this to extend my answer more? So that would be my advice to this candidate. The coherence and cohesion I thought was pretty good. Like I said, I really liked their transition in the very first paragraph. I liked their first 2 sections very well, or I liked them a lot. So I give a 6.5 for that. My thing for them to improve would be in the second paragraph. The sort of those mechanical transitions we talked about need to be worked on. So they were correct, but if they want to move up, they need to sort of get more natural flowing transitions going on. Vocabulary, I would have given them a 6 for vocabulary. There were some incorrect vocabulary choices, and I thought they needed to expand by using sort of less common words and phrases. In their answer, which is something that they can work on. Grammar, I thought their grammar was pretty good. I liked their grammar a lot, so I wanted to give them a 7 for grammar. You know, I thought they used quite a sort of a variety of sentences. They tried to use some different punctuation. There was only one sentence really where I was kind of like I had to think a little bit more about what they were trying to say. But they produced a lot of correct sentences, which I thought was good, or they only had some very minor issues. So I thought their grammar overall was pretty solid. And they, all used everything in the right tense. They described it well. So overall, I thought that was quite strong. So overall, coming out at a 6.5 for this answer. And I would advise this candidate to work a little bit more on their vocabulary, making sure that they're using the words that they've learned correctly. And I would ask them to practice more about extending their answer, writing a little bit more, getting faster at writing a task 1. Because if you can write with a little bit more speed, then you can add in more detail and get more practice at thinking about more things that you can say about your task 1 answer. So that would be my advice to this candidate.